Part 8. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Bulletin Liang. Chapter 71. Li Qing and others pushed the door open and saw a half-shaved thigh bone next to the stove, and some broken fingers and toes scattered in the trash can. Seeing this, everyone understood what was going on. Chen Shooting couldn't help but run out and retched when she saw such a cruel scene. The dwarf finally reacted, "Big brother, the buns outside are not made of human flesh, right?" Zhang Dongzhou also retched, and the strong man who didn't even blink when he was cheating on his friend also covered his mouth and nose, trying to stop the churning of his stomach. Li Qing's face was livid. This was the first time he had seen such a scene in his 2 lives. Wang's Haiheng's perversion made him a little disgusted. "Be sure, remove the bar." Hearing this, the dwarf started vomiting on the spot. It was a pity that he had just eaten several barbecued pork buns in one breath. Li Qing had a gloomy face and walked towards the utility room. The cry for help just now was obviously from the utility room. "Li Qing, save me." Looking through the gap, Li Qing vaguely saw a big eye, looking at him with tears in its eyes. Zhang Dongzhou stepped forward and pulled the door hard, but there was no movement. It was obvious that the door was locked. "Brother, I'll get something to pry it open." Li Qing waved his hand, no need to bother. He walked forward and pulled the door handle hard. The entire iron door was pulled out of the wall by him. With a boom, he threw the entire door to the ground. The dwarf, the inheritor of the Southern Mo family fist, looked at Li Qing dully and looked at Li Qing in disbelief. Damn! Born with supernatural powers. Li Qing saw the scene inside. "Dongzhou, don't come in." It turned out that a naked woman was curled up in the corner, trying to cover the key parts with her hands, looking at him with tears in her eyes. "Miss He." Li Qing quickly took off his coat and put it on her. That's right. This woman was He Min, who had met Li Qing once at the banquet. Wow! Li Qing. Falling into Li Qing's arms, He Min finally couldn't help the fear in her heart and cried loudly. Feeling the woman in his arms trembling constantly due to excessive fright, Li Qing gently patted her back. It was not until 5 minutes later that He Min raised her head embarrassedly and came out of his arms. "Miss He, why are you here?" Li Qing asked suspiciously. He Min cried again. It turned out that she was jogging in the morning and saw this restaurant she often visited, so she wanted to buy some barbecued pork buns to eat. Unexpectedly, Wang's Haiheng saw that there was no one around, and he hijacked her to the utility room. If there was no one outside who wanted to buy buns, she would probably be raped and killed, and finally made into bun fillings. Li Qing stood up and looked around. There were several corpses lying in the northeast corner. Obviously, Wang's Haiheng had not had time to deal with them. Another scream was heard outside. He Min stood up and got into Li Qing's arms like a frightened little rabbit. Li Qing looked out and saw that Wang's Haiheng had woken up at some point and was chasing and hacking at the dwarf who was practicing Southern Mo family fist. The voice was also made by the dwarf, whose back was bloody and obviously injured. He looked at the dwarf running around and Wang's Haiheng who was chasing and hacking him in circles with amusement. "Dongzhou, tell them to shut up." Zhang Dongzhou walked up quickly upon hearing the voice, grabbed Wang's Haiheng by the collar, and had a big fight before he could hack. Wang's Haiheng's eyes darkened, his brain buzzed, and he fainted again. The dwarf lay on the ground weakly. "Get rid of it, call an ambulance for me, I'm dying." Feeling the woman in his arms twisting, Shooting, "Go buy a set of women's clothes," Li Qing said to Chen Shooting who was vomiting outside. Not long after, Chen Shooting walked into the utility room with clothes in her hand. "Shooting, help Miss He put on her clothes before you come out." After saying that, Li Qing was about to walk out of the utility room. "Don't go, I'm scared." He Min pulled Li Qing's sleeve and whispered. He looked at He Min wrapped in her coat with amusement. She looked pitiful, not at all like the proud daughter of the He family who was as proud as a white swan at the banquet. Well, I'll turn around, you put on your clothes quickly. Li Qing turned around and only heard the rustling sound of clothes behind him. Not long after, he walked out of the restaurant with the two girls. The entrance of the restaurant was full of people. The diners didn't dare to approach Li Qing because he had a gun, and waited for the police to arrive from a distance. Li Qing came out with the two girls, followed by Zhang Dongxiu, who was supporting the short-tempered dwarf who was out of breath. "The police are here," someone shouted. A team of police hurried over, led by a pot-bellied Mediterranean. After reading this, I shook my head. I thought the police in Hong Kong were bad enough, but I didn't expect that the police in Macau were even worse. Huh, who called the police? I'm so tired. Haidi kept fanning himself with his hat. Me. An old lady stood up enthusiastically. "Officer, he has a gun." The old lady pointed at Li Qing and shouted, "Look how he beat Sanhauser." The dwarf named Sanhauser was pale and his eyes kept rolling up. "Please be kind and give me an ambulance. I'm losing too much blood." Hearing this, the police pulled out their guns and pointed them at Li Qing as if they were facing a great enemy. "Hey, you guys should understand that this is not the case. You will know when you go in," He Min stood up and said. It was then that Haidong realized that the girl in front of him looked familiar. After thinking for a while, he tried to call out, "Miss He." He Min nodded, and Haidong quickly ordered to put down the gun and sent someone to investigate. "Miss He, why is it you? Is this your friend?" It's okay, it's okay." Haidong walked up to He Min in a flattering manner and greeted He Min. "Officer, I advise you to go in and take a look. The murderer is inside." He Min grabbed Li Qing's sleeve and said softly. Haidong heard that there was a murderer inside, and seemed to have frightened Miss He. He immediately became serious and walked towards the hotel. As soon as he arrived at the door, he saw a group of police officers covering their mouths, hurriedly running out of the hotel, and holding the wall and vomiting. "Useless things, what scenes have you not seen?" Haidong scolded his subordinates who were not doing well. He walked into the hotel slowly. After a moment, Haidong rolled out of the hotel, and the breakfast in his stomach burst out of his mouth like a flood. He almost vomited his stomach. "You, drag the murderer out, I want to beat him to death." "You." In fact, he just followed the police's lead and looked at the body in the utility room, and did not pay attention to the leg bones on the kitchen counter. The crowd of onlookers looked at the scene curiously. What was inside that made the police unbearable? A group of police dragged Wang's Haihang out. "Chief, there are only 4 bodies inside, and the body of the boss's wife is missing," the police whispered in Mediterranean's ear. Middle East finally stopped vomiting and wiped his mouth with a towel. Slowly sitting on the chair, he suddenly smelled the fragrance of barbecued pork buns. He had just vomited out his breakfast and his stomach was empty at this time. "What's going on?" He picked up the barbecued pork buns in the steamer and took a bite. It tasted unexpectedly good. But he didn't notice that the police officers around him were looking at him with horror. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 72. At this time, Wang's Haihang also woke up from his coma and twisted his body, but found that his hands had been handcuffed. I looked around and saw people watching the show. "Tell me, did you kill the people inside?" Mediterranean was eating barbecued pork buns when a baton hit Wang's Haihang on the shoulder. At this time, Wang's Haihang was also very naive. "How about I killed them? They deserve to be killed, they all bullied me, and Mater all deserves to die." Wang's Haihang smiled nervously and glanced at Li Qing and others viciously. If it weren't for Li Qing, he would have killed more people. "Okay, just admit it," Mediterranean was overjoyed. It was a great achievement for him that the mass murder case was solved so easily. Where's the boss's wife? Why isn't there the boss's wife's body? Where did you do it? Mediterranean continued to interrogate. Haha. Wang's Haiheng laughed even more crazily and became more nervous when he heard this. Are the steamed buns delicious? Wang's Haiheng looked at the Mediterranean Sea playfully. Mediterranean hit Wang's Haiheng on the back with a stick. I'm sorry, I asked about the body of the landlady, but you asked me if the buns are delicious. As soon as he finished speaking, Mediterranean was stunned. Pointing at Bayazai in disbelief, you. Wang's Haiheng smiled evilly and said, barbecued pork buns with added ingredients and no price increase, are they delicious? After a period of silence, people around him started vomiting one after another, and then like an infection, everyone started vomiting. The difference is that those who have eaten the barbecued pork buns vomited heartbreakingly, those who have not eaten it just retched. It's dry, it's cool. Mediterranean dropped half of the barbecued pork buns in his hands, squatted down and vomited. I'm afraid I will have a psychological shadow on barbecued pork buns for the rest of my life. Hey, do you know what life is worse than death? Without waiting for Wang's Haiheng's reply, Li Qing squatted down and while everyone was vomiting, he quickly tapped Wang's Haiheng's cervical spine with his finger. This is it. Li Qing smiled and turned around to leave. Wang's Haiheng blinked, thinking that Li Qing was playing tricks. Mater, wait until I go out and kill you. There is no death penalty in Hejiang, so Wang's Haiheng is not afraid at all. According to his crime, he will be released from prison in 20 to 30 years. Wang's Haiheng suddenly found that he had no feeling below the neck and could not even control his fingers. He only had feeling above the neck. Suddenly he fell into fear. At this time, he also understood what Li Qing meant when he left. Send me to the hospital quickly, I can't feel my hands and feet, Wang's Haiheng shouted in horror. Please send me to the hospital, I really can't hold on any longer. 3 monkeys, the descendants of the southern school of Magia Quan, were lying on the ground and yelled with all their strength. Li Qing looked at Hemin, who was leaning next to him. His walking posture was slightly different. Is there something wrong with Miss Hemin? Li Qing asked a little strangely. Hemin didn't say anything, but there was a blush on his face. Chen Shooting secretly patted Li Qing's lower body and whispered in her ear, don't ask too much, of course it's uncomfortable for girls not wearing underwear. Li Qing was shocked when he heard this and remembered the faint hint of black at the base of Hemin's fair legs in the utility room just now. When the nose becomes hot, nosebleeds almost remain. Miss He, do you need me to take you home? Hemin didn't speak, but nodded with a blushing face. After all, Li Qing had just seen all of her body, and she was always a little shy when being with him. The group of people sent Hemin to the door of the villa and rejected Hemin's invitation. After all, it was really inappropriate now. Dad. When Hemin saw Mr. He could no longer bear the grievance in his heart and cried. What's wrong? Mr. He looked at his beloved daughter and said calmly. He loved this little daughter in every possible way, holding it in his hands for fear of falling, and holding it in his mouth for fear of melting. He would make anyone unhappy in Hejiang if he dared to make her daughter unhappy. Dad, today Hemin told Mr. He what happened today. After hearing this, Hemin's face turned pale. He did not expect that there would be someone so bold in Hejiang. He decided to make that man's life in prison worse than death. I've also heard about Li Qing, a rising star from Xiangjiang. Mr. He nodded to express his appreciation for Li Qing. Then you have to thank me properly. Hemin shook her father's arm and said coquettishly. How can I thank you? How about marrying my little daughter to him, Mr. He joked. Hemin's eyes were a little blurry when he heard this, and his face suddenly turned red. I hate you. I'm going to take a shower. After saying that, Hemin ran upstairs. Mr. He looked at his daughter dotingly, and then frowned. Li Qing is not his son-in-law candidate. If he were replaced by a young master from the Xiangjiang family, he might still consider it. Go ahead and tell Wang's Haihen not to let him die so easily. Mister, he ordered the butler beside him. Picking up a cigar, he paused and said, the day after tomorrow, we will treat Li Qing to a banquet. He also wanted to meet this young man who was all-powerful in Xiangjiang. He Min, who was taking a shower upstairs, was lying in a bathtub filled with water. Thinking back to the feeling of holding Li Qing in the utility room in the morning, this was her first contact with a man in so many years. Mr. He's family education is relatively traditional, and He Min's thoughts are relatively conservative. Furthermore, he has a high vision and does not look down on ordinary men. So He Min is already in her 20s and has never really been in love. When Li Qing put clothes on him and patted her back, it was the first time she felt a sense of security other than her father. Her hands unconsciously slapped the water surface, and she just remembered her father's joke. If it's true, it's also good. He Min muttered softly. Then she buried her head in the water and tried to empty herself. Chen Shooting seems to be from Hejiang University, why don't I go see her tomorrow, and meet Li Qing by the way? He Min thought wildly. At this time, Li Qing was being tortured by Chen Shooting's 100,000 Ys. Brother Qing, how do you know there is something wrong with the barbecued pork buns? Chen Shooting asked angrily. Li Qing was very upset. I have seen a movie in my previous life, can I tell you? Brother Qing, how do you know there is something wrong with Wang's Haihen? Because he looks like a cop, Li Qing said unhappily. Brother Qing, why is he so cruel? How should I know? Brother Qing, is Sister He Min white? White, et. Chen Shooting glanced at Li Qing, turned her head away, and threw a tantrum. Li Qing scratched his head, wondering if he had been fooled by this little girl. Just as Li Qing was trying to coax the little girl, he was interrupted by Zhang Dongxiu. Brother Qing, look. Li Qing looked at his shop in Hejiang, and saw a group of young and dangerous people from Hejiang surrounding him, constantly shouting something. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 73. The business here in Hejiang only sent a few people from AO, and large-scale layout has not yet begun. Maid, you must pay the protection fee today. A short mule was hopping and cursing at the door. The surrounding young and dangerous boys also followed with weapons such as steel pipes and machetes, and shouted loudly. Me. Li Qing got out of the car and laughed angrily at this sentence. In the new world where people are rampant in Xiangjiang, in Hejiang they are blocked and want to pay land fees. If this spreads to Xiangjiang, the entire new world will be laughed at by other societies. In terms of strength, these stinky fish and shrimps in Hejiang are not enough to defeat Hongxing, let alone New World. The young and dangerous boys who were shouting and shouting felt like they were pushed away by a strong force. I'll wipe it, who is it? Why are you squeezing? Some young and dangerous boys cursed and looked back, only to see a burly man standing in front of him like a mountain. Without saying anything, he was slapped. He felt dizzy, and then fainted decisively. The young and dangerous boys who were noisy just now were silent for a while, and then started to curse Zhang Dongxiu again. Silly man, where are you? If you dare to do it, I will cut off a few centimeters for you today. Zhang Dongxiu unbuttoned his suit, and two pistols were exposed from the gun pockets on both sides. The young and dangerous boys who were clamoring just now suddenly turned off their fire. Brother Qing, why are you here? Ao walked out of the store and quickly said hello to Li Qing. Ao, what's going on? Li Qing raised his eyebrows and looked at these young and dangerous boys. Go inside and I'll explain it to you. Ao had an embarrassed look on his face. Li Qing nodded, and just as he was about to follow him in, the young and dangerous boy who had just been shouting became more energetic again. What are you afraid of? They only have 2 guns in total. Can they kill so many of us? Let's fight them. Bang! Without saying a word, Li Qing pulled out his gun and shot the young and dangerous guy in the thigh. Ah! The screams resounded throughout the street, and the spectators shrank their heads and left quickly. Go away, if anyone dares to force you to say anything again, I'll beat you to death. Li Qing's voice was not loud, but it was like an edict in the ears of these young and dangerous boys. He held the injured man up and down and ran away in despair. Brother Qing, the man who just ran away was the kin man. Li Qing lit a cigarette and slowly listened to Ao's story. Onal Cannery was part of Heshengli in the early years. Later, due to profit issues, it had its own prefix, known as Heonal. Since most of the members are factory workers, they are also called canned in the world. It turns out that canned goods had just come to power, and Chiren Keixi also knew that these shops were a famous New World industry in Xiangjiang. He wanted to use these shops to demonstrate to make his voice more powerful. After all, daring to fight against the top 3 associations in Xiangjiang requires not only courage, but also strength. After listening to Ao's narration, Li Qing sneered, I don't know. Even the He 2 with the biggest prefix dare not rashly conflict with the New World. I don't know where this Keixi got the courage. We are not afraid of the Guangzhou Association even if they come. The main reason is that the police here seem to be on the side of the can. Ao thought about it and said it. In fact, he was also afraid of causing trouble for Li Qing. Otherwise, according to the characters of these desperados, Keixi would have shot Keixi long ago. Lessie? Police. Li Qing frowned slightly. It seemed that things were not as simple as Ao said. This Keixi not only wanted to establish his authority in the New World. He tapped his fingers lightly on the table, and the only sound that could be heard in the whole room was dong dong. Brother, do you want to shake me? Zhang Dongzhou asked tentatively. In fact, Xiangjiang and Hejiang face each other across the sea, so getting here is more convenient than taking the subway. In particular, Li Qing also controls most of the smuggling business in Xiangjiang, so transporting thousands of people a day is not a problem. No, it's not appropriate now. I've received news that Mr. He will decentralize part of the casino operating rights and the folding horse business in a while. If a large number of people come here at this time, I'm afraid it will cause unnecessary disputes. Li Qing shook his head and rejected Zhang Dongzhou's suggestion. Wait until I meet Mr. He. Li Qing then looked at Ao, if you dare to jump again, Ao will assassinate him. Li Qing's eyes flashed with murderous intent. Ao nodded. He had already had thoughts of assassination, but he was just afraid of ruining the boss's plan. Okay, let's put things aside for a while and let's have a nice get-together. Li Qing said to his brothers with a smile. In order to give his boss a clean break, Ao deliberately arranged for Hejiang's famous delicacy, curry beef offal. A group of people gathered around the stove, talking animatedly. Brother Qing, come here, this is the most delicious beef. The young man with burns on his face specially picked it out for the boss. He has been wearing the gold watch that Li Qing gave him and he likes it very much. Patting his head, Li Qing smiled slightly and said, Sir, I will take you to South Korea sometime and give you a plastic surgery, don't worry. The young master nodded gratefully. His appearance has always been his most inferior aspect. Many times when he met the girl he liked, he did not dare to express his feelings. Brother Qing, what is high? Is it delicious? Chen Shooting asked innocently. Come on, try it. Li Qing directly copied a piece and put it into Chen Shooting's mouth. Huh? How come it tastes the same as cow joy? A group of people burst out laughing when they heard this. Niu Bao, hi, is the Cantonese name for Niu Huangzai. Ah, you are so disgusting. Li Qing and others laughed even louder. After drinking and eating, Li Qing and others came to the hotel where they were staying. In the room, Chen Shooting was taking a shower, while Li Qing was smoking and thinking about the next plan. Winning the operating rights of the casino and the horse stacking business was his purpose for coming to Hejiang this time, and how to gain a firm foothold was the most important part of it. Looking at today's situation, it is obvious that the local snakes in Hejiang do not want outside forces to intervene. Li Qing is not afraid of the power of Hejiang's associations. He can immediately deal with these weak soldiers and generals by sending 1,000 people here. What he was afraid of was that he didn't want outside forces to get involved and would use the police and local gangsters to jointly suppress the stores in the New World. This would give him some clues. Brother Qing, what are you thinking about? Chen Shooting was wrapped in a bath towel and quietly hugged Li Qing's neck. It's okay. By the way, Shooting, do you know why I asked you to choose the major of construction engineering? Chen Shooting rubbed her arms vigorously and shook her head like a kitten. After you graduate, I will let you go to the mainland. I don't want it, I want to stay with you. Chen Shooting had a childish temper. The real estate in the mainland has great potential. You have to open up the mainland real estate market for me. Li Qing said to her seriously. In his heart, he had silently planned Chen Shooting's future path. Chen Shooting paused and nodded obediently. After a while, Li Qing was raising his gun and mounting his horse when his cell phone rang. He frowned and hung up the phone. Who could be so ignorant at this late hour? But just as I hung up, it rang again. Hey, who's there? Li Qing's tone was a little impatient. Li Qing, hello, I am he Min. Oh? Miss He, do you have anything to do with me? Chen Shooting secretly hugged her from behind. Li Qing felt two warm balls on his back, and his scalp suddenly felt numb. Li Qing couldn't help it. What's the sound? He Minjiao's questioning voice came from the other side of the phone. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 74. No sound. Li Qing cleared his voice. Liar, I clearly heard a sound. Frowning, Li Qing felt that this Miss He was somewhat ignorant. Miss He, what's the matter? If nothing happens, I'll hang up. No, hey, my dad invites you to my house tomorrow night. He Min said quickly. Okay, got it? Li Qing was almost going crazy because he couldn't hold back. He had no time to be polite to He Min and hung up the phone in a hurry. He Min on the other side held the microphone and couldn't put it down for a long time. No man had ever been so cold to her. She found Li Qing more and more attractive and attracted her more and more. Leprechaun. Li Qing gently patted Chen Shooting's buttocks. It was not until 2 hours later that Li Qing fed Chen Shooting and the two fell asleep deeply. The next day, both of them got up very late. After lunch, Li Qing and Chen Shooting walked around the campus of Hejiang University. Brother Qing, you have to come over to see me tomorrow. Chen Shooting pouted reluctantly. Don't worry, I've been in Hejiang during this period. When I'm done, I'll come to have dinner with you every day. Finally, with Chen Shooting reluctant to leave, Li Qing left Hejiang University. In order to attend Mr. He's birthday tonight, he went to a gold jewelry store and bought a piece of jewelry for He Min. At 7 o'clock in the evening, Li Qing took Zhang Dongxiu to the He family's Songshan mansion. In fact, Mr. He also owns a lot of real estate in Xiangjiang, but his wife lives in other houses, and he doesn't really like living in Xiangjiang. Mr. Li, please. Following the butler's guidance, Li Qing walked into the mansion. Li Qing, you're here. He Min knew that Li Qing was coming and had been waiting for him at the door for a long time. Hello, Miss He. This is a gift for you. Li Qing handed the gift box to He Min. He Min happily took the gift and said thank you. Daddy, Li Qing is here, you have to thank him properly. He Min hugged her father's arm and acted coquettishly. Hello, Mr. He. Li Qing took 2 steps forward, stretched out his hand, and took the right hand handed over by Mr. He. Hello, Li Qing, I have long admired your name. The two exchanged some more pleasantries. Come, Li Qing, let me introduce you to some friends. Li Qing's eyes flashed with surprise when he heard this, and the smile on his face became even brighter. Good. 4 middle-aged people were sitting in the reception room, talking and laughing. Seeing Mr. He arriving, everyone stood up and said hello. Okay, let me introduce to you. This is Mr. Li Qing from the New World. Mr. He introduced to the other 4 people that they all greeted each other and Li Qing, and seemed to be in harmony on the surface. After Mr. He's introduction, Li Qing learned that these 4 people were the talk makers of the society that controlled Hejiang. They were Kexi from Kankan, Ma Jiaguo from the Alphabet Gang, Ji Shiwei from Daquan, and Mo Dingping from Shenji Gang. Li Qing looked emphatically at Kexi and Ma Jiaguo. These 2 people were the most powerful in Hejiang and were also his biggest competitors. I kind of understand what Mr. He is trying to do today, I want him to get out of the way. Mr. He said a few words and made an excuse to go out. When Mr. He went out, the atmosphere among the 5 people was not so harmonious. Boss Li, why are you here in Hejiang this time? Kexi asked angrily. Li Qing looked at the thin can talker emphatically, and spread his hands. I heard that there is a dog with no eyes who dares to charge me the New World Tutu land fee. Let me see it. Who can do this? Be bold. Kexi's face twitched when she heard this, and she unbuttoned a few buttons of her shirt. Boss Li, the Hejiang River is not as good as the Xiangjiang River. Be careful that the waves are too strong and the boat capsizes. Others also looked like they shared the same hatred. Especially Ma Jiaguo, who has always been hostile to Li Qing's arrival. Only small boats capsize, big ships are never afraid of wind and rain. Are you right? Li Qing played with the gold lighter in his hand and looked at the 4 people opposite him with disdain. The people in Hejiang are probably only good at talking. If they were in Xiangjiang, Li Qing would probably beat their brains out. I said MLGB. Kexi slapped the table, suddenly stood up, pointed at Li Qing and cursed. Click. Li Qing closed the lid of the lighter and looked at Kexi with murderous eyes. He stood up and grabbed Cai-11's neck and pushed him against the wall. Click. Li Qing lit the lighter and looked into Kexi's eyes with a sinister smile. If you dare to scold me, don't take your photos. At this time, Kexi was choked so hard that she couldn't even breathe. She even had very little strength to struggle. The flame of the lighter slowly approached his left eye, and the screams spread throughout the villa. The other 3 people seemed to be frightened when they saw this situation. They all sat on the sofa in fear and did not dare to move. After a while, the whole room was filled with the smell of barbecue. What's going on, Mr. He heard the voice, opened the door and walked in. Suddenly seeing this situation, my face twitched, cruel. Li Qing looked back at him, put Kexi down, and smiled, it's okay, I just want to communicate with this boss Kexi. Li Qing, is this called communication? There is a saying that a strong dragon cannot overwhelm a local snake. Li Qing looked at Mr. He with a smile. Now he completely understood that Mr. He had no intention of involving outside forces. He didn't get used to it, and slightly opened his 5 fingers into claws. Mr. He, let's see if this dragon is a 5-clawed blue dragon or a hybrid dragon. The other 4 people were stunned when they heard this. This Li Qingtu was so stubborn that he dared to talk to Mr. He like this. Mr. He's eyes flashed, and he still smiled happily. Young man, you are still too young. Mr. He, unfortunately, I got a call from home. The golden retriever at home is about to give birth. I'll come again next time. Sorry. Li Qing didn't hesitate, stood up directly, and walked out with quick strides. Kexi was left slumped on the ground, wailing, Li Qing, I will definitely let you die. Then I'll wait and see. With Li Qing's temper, since he has already broken up with each other, there is no need to be conciliatory. Everything just depends on his strength. I, Li Xin, can't beat him because I'm not strong enough. If you can't hold on, it's because you don't have enough strength. Let all my subordinates see the real chapter. Mr. He looked at Li Qing's back coldly. He had always had the final say in Hejiang, but unexpectedly, a stunned young man came from Xiangjiang. It just so happens that this stupid young man can still pry his big ship. He turned to look at CAI-11 and said, stop howling and carry out the original plan. When Li Qing walked out of the door, he happened to see He Min, who had just changed clothes upstairs and was wearing the bracelet he had just given. Li Qing, why are you going? Leaving so soon? He Min looked at Li Qing in shock. He had just arrived for a while, and he was leaving now. He, I have something to do at home. Please come visit me next time. Li Qing said to He Min with a smile. Then he turned around and waved to Zhang Dongxiu, who was standing at the door, and walked out. Hey, hey. He Min never stopped Li Qing. She frowned and quickly walked into the reception room. Mr. He waved when he saw her coming in, and the three of them helped Kexi out of the reception room. Father, what is going on? He Min didn't even call him daddy anymore. My dear, this matter cannot be explained in 1 or 2 sentences, so please leave it alone. Mr. He said with a smile. He is my savior. Give him some money. Although he didn't know the reason, He Min still felt that there was something wrong with his father. It's so annoying, He Min stamped his feet and ran out. At this time, Li Qing was driving towards the city with Zhang Dongxiu. Suddenly a car quickly passed their car, and Li Qing vaguely looked at the person in the car who seemed to be holding something like a remote control. Dongxiu stopped the car. His sensitive ears heard the sound of Didi in the car. Zhang Dongxiu immediately stopped the car, opened the door and walked out with Li Qing. The sound of Didi became more urgent. No, get down now. There was a loud boom and the whole car turned into a huge fireball. Hejiang. Kexi. Li Qing stamped his foot on the curbstone on the side of the road, and several cracks appeared on the hard curbstone. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Banwanqing Bulletin Liang. Chapter 75. Li Qing sat on the curb with deep eyes, staring straight at the car that had turned into scrap metal. Brother Qing, how are you okay? Ao and others received the news and hurried over. Li Qing shook his head and said nothing. Brother, do it, just kill them. The young master stood up and shouted loudly with a fierce look on his face. In the past, terrorist attacks were carried out in the New World. Unexpectedly, I was bombed first in Hejiang. Since it didn't kill me, you guys are in for a good show. Li Qing flicked the ashes from his cigarette and smiled calmly. I don't know why everyone felt trembling in their hearts when they saw Li Qing's smile, as if something had caught their heart. Ao, please check the information on the 4 clubs, Can, Alphabet Gang, Daquan, and Zhenji, and list their key members. Sir, go and contact Zhang Qiandan and ask him to send some of his younger brothers and get some arms over. Explosion beads, you go make some time bombs. Li Qing coldly gave orders one after another, and several people took action quickly after listening. At this time, the can talker Kexi, who had been bandaged into a one-eyed dragon, stood respectfully in front of Mr. He. Mr. He, no matter what you say this time, Li Qing will be killed. Kexi said viciously, her hand involuntarily touching her painful left eye, which seemed to be blind. Mr. He nodded, picked up the cigars on the table, and threw one to Kexi. It wouldn't be right if you really blow him up. Just let him retreat. Kexi bowed and took the cigar. Okay, okay, I will closely observe his movements and try my best to drive him back to Xiangjiang. But anyone can see the murderous intent in the remaining one eye. Mister, he glanced at him and waved, go to the hospital first. In fact, Mr. He had no choice but to share part of the casino operating rights and profits from the horse-drawing business this time. If it is really taken over by a foreign club, it will not be conducive to his control. It is best to leave it to the local club. Anyway, it is his dog, so just give him some dog food. As a father, he was satisfied, but He-min upstairs was unhappy. With her IQ, she had already guessed that there was a disagreement between Li Qing and her father. It was possible that his father's invitation to Li Qing was not a thank you at all, but a hangmen banquet and a show of authority. Especially when she saw the talkative people in those societies, she became more and more aware that this possibility was very high. He-min held the phone and rubbed it repeatedly, wondering whether he should call Li Qing. Oh, I'm so annoyed. She grabbed the quilt and covered her head. The things Li Qing ordered went very smoothly. In less than a day, the younger brother and the ammunition had already arrived. There were not many young people here this time, only a few hundred people. The main reason was that Li Qing was afraid that there would be too many people and he would be discovered, so he would alert others. Brother Qing, this is the information of the key members of the 4 societies. Ao handed him a list. Li Qing looked at the list and first circled the white paper fans of the 4 societies, kill these people first. Ao looked at the list, and then walked out with the young master and others. Late at night, after all, Hejiang is not as prosperous as Xiangjiang, especially in more remote places, so everyone turns off the lights and goes to bed early. Canned Lai Tuwei, with a drunken face, was swaying and blowing water on the road with a few other boys. Does New World know? Lai Tuwei spoke to the younger brothers mysteriously with his tongue hanging out. I know, Brother Wei, aren't they the same stores that didn't pay the protection fee last time? The younger brother glanced at Lai Tuwei curiously. You know, the New World is one of the top 3 clubs in Xiangjiang, and the speaker, Li Qingdi, is famous for his shady intentions. Those few shops were just given by him to the young man who was on the run. I have to say that Lai Tuwei knows quite a lot. Do you know about the Huanshan Road bombing last night? Lai Tuwei became increasingly quiet. The younger brothers nodded, and the fire of gossip burst out from their eyes. That was bombed by our boss. The person sitting in the car was Li Qing. Unfortunately, he was not killed. Lai Tuwei shook his head regretfully. If he really killed Li Qing, his boss would be famous. The younger brother looked at Lai Tuwei, who was struggling to walk, and said, Brother, why don't you stop driving? Get lost, I'm not drunk yet. Lai Tuwei pushed his younger brother away and moved unsteadily into the car. Brother Wei, drive slowly and be careful. The younger brothers nodded and bowed in greeting. Lai Tuwei took a drink and waved his hand. Don't worry, it's okay to drift around corners. Put the key in the car and start moving. Beep! Before Lai Tuwei could react, the entire car exploded, and then the fuel tank exploded, and the fire enveloped the entire car in an instant. Lai Tuwei drifted away without feeling the pain, leaving only half of his legs hanging on the tree by the roadside. Similar scenes also appeared with white paper fans from other societies. The brake line of Li Baoshan from the Alphabet Gang was cut and he fell straight down the mountain road. His body was thrown everywhere and he couldn't be put back together. Sanmazi from the Daquan Gang was strangled with an iron wire and hung on a plaque at the Daquan headquarters. His neck was stretched several centimeters, and he died in a miserable state. He Shenji's Wang Meiza was even more miserable. He became a watered pig, his internal organs were burst open, and it was said that even 7 or 8 of his younger brothers could not lift him. For a time, everyone in the Hejiang society was in danger, and ordinary hall leaders would not dare to go out without bringing along 17 or 8 young men. At night, I would stay peacefully in my own place and not go anywhere. As a result, the public security in Hejiang immediately improved. For this reason, the citizens of Hejiang also presented the police force with a banner with the slogan "Protecting the Family and the Country, Selfless Dedication." The Hejiang police were really proud for a few days. But the 4 club members were not so happy. They sat together smoking cigarettes and sighing. It must have been done by Li Qing. The one-eyed dragon Kexi slapped the table and said fiercely, "Nonsense, if it were me, I would do the same thing. I almost blew him up, so why don't I try my best to eat with you?" Ji Shiwei, who was in the big circle, glanced at Kexi. Market Wei Indaquan did not agree with provoking Li Qing from the beginning. After all, Li Qing was a well-known figure in Xiangjiang due to his reputation. If a real fierce dragon crosses the river, no one here can stop it. We agreed to advance and retreat together, and now you're making sarcastic remarks." Kexi pointed at Shishi Wei's nose and cursed. "Qian Liliang, do you know how miserable my death was with the white paper fan? My neck was stretched several centimeters. If it weren't for you, would this have happened?" Ji Shiwei was not used to Kexi and started scolding her directly. "Okay, stop arguing. Now we have to solve the problem. If we fight among ourselves, we will be eaten by Li Qing." Ma Jikuo from the Alphabet Gang stood up and sat down as the peacemaker. "No one can beat the New World, why don't we join together? Isn't there a Sanlian gang in Wanwan? Let's help the 4-league group," Kexi, who has a good brain, suggested. "The purpose is to drive Li Qing out. Once the external forces are dealt with, we can disband." Seeing that no one responded, Kexi continued. "You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all." Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 76. The other 3 were lost in thought. The piece of fat that Mr. He threw out was indeed very attractive, but relying on a single society would definitely not be able to compete with New World. In this way, I only want part of the casino operating rights, and you can share the horse stacking business equally. CAI 11, wearing a one-eyed dragon eye patch, pretended to be generous. The eyes of the other 3 lit up after hearing this. This is possible. The horse stacking business is a big deal, so it would be better if one less person shared it. The 3 looked at each other and nodded. The temporary alliance, 4 Union Group, was established. 4 Union Group was originally a local snake, and it united together, which made it difficult for the younger brother from Hong Kong in New World to take action. As soon as I went out, I felt that someone was watching me, and it was very difficult to assassinate him. In a week, only 3 people were assassinated. The countermeasures of the 4 Union Group made people feel that they had no idea where to start. Brother, as soon as our people appeared, they were targeted and could not take action. Ao spread his hands helplessly. Li Qing also discovered this problem. After all, this is Hejiang, a small place. The other side is a local snake, and they can tell who is a new face at a glance. Contact Kandon and ask him to send some more brothers over. There is no other way now, only the simple human wave tactics, at least to gain a foothold in Hejiang first. Zhang Kandon received Li Qing's order and acted quickly. Even the 2 brothers Dehu and Ergu, who rarely left their homes, came to support. In the room, Li Qing spread the map of the entire Hejiang on the table, holding a half-smoked cigarette in his hand, with half a cigarette ash on it. He has been staring at the map for more than half an hour. Although the room was full of people, no one dared to breathe heavily, for fear of disturbing Li Qing. We are now in the Fatima parish. The first task is to conquer the Fatima parish and the St. Paul parish, and then slowly radiate to other parishes. Li Qing finally spoke. All the leaders looked at the map, listened to his explanation, and nodded. Also pay attention to attracting more local small societies and gangsters. As long as they make contributions, we will reward them generously. Dongxiu, I'll leave this to you. Take out 200 million Hong Kong dollars from the company's account. As long as they are willing to work hard, I will dare to let them take over. Li Qing said firmly. Zhang Dongxiu nodded quickly, and according to Li Qing's division of labor, each leader led his brothers to start working. Heze, have you heard? New World has started recruiting people? The resettlement fee alone is 50,000 per person. Do you want to go? A bad boy with red hair on the street asked his friend next to him. New World? What society? Heze asked curiously. Damn, you don't know about the New World in Hong Kong, do you? Red hair said in surprise. Heze shook his head. The most prominent society in Hong Kong now, the boss Li Qing once fought more than a dozen people alone, and it is said that he has killed dozens of people. Although Red Hair exaggerated a little, most of what he said was true. The most important thing is that as long as you make a great contribution to the community, you can directly get promoted, at least to a small leader. Hung Mao looked excited, as if he had already taken office. Then what are you waiting for? Hurry up. Heze's eyes lit up when he heard it. Similar scenes appeared in various parishes in Hejiang, and even people from the outlying islands heard the news and rushed to join. For a time, the number of New World's brothers in Hejiang increased greatly, and it was fully capable of fighting 1 against 4. At least some daily friends did not need the elite brothers from Hong Kong to rush to the front. In the following time, New World and the 4 United Group continued to fight. At first, it was sporadic fighting, and in the end it turned into a land war. At night, the two sides started to fight, scaring ordinary residents of Hejiang so much that they dared not go out at night. After losing some new brothers, New World successfully took over the 3 parishes of Datong, Mongha Parish, and Fatima Parish, and it can be said that it took over most of the Hejiang Peninsula. The remaining Fengshan Parish and Huawang Parish in the peninsula are tightly surrounded by the forces of the New World, and it is only a matter of time before they are taken down. This is still because of the obstruction of the Hejiang police, otherwise the entire peninsula area has been completely taken down. As for the outlying islands, they cannot be taken over for a while because of the Mirror Sea in the middle. Li Qing quickly absorbed all the small societies and idle people in the 3 parishes. It can be said that the New World has established a firm foothold in Hejiang. Even if Mr. He comes forward now, it is difficult to drive the New World out. In the main hall of Cantu, the 4 leaders of the 4-link group have a sad face, and they all smoke and don't talk. Especially Ji Shiwei of the Big Circle gang, who suffered the most losses this time. Not only was his land robbed, but many of his younger brothers were also absorbed by the New World. Because most of the people in the Big Circle gang came from the mainland to make a living, they have no sense of belonging to Hejiang, so naturally they will help whoever gives more money. Damn, you guys come up with an idea. The veins on Ji Shiwei's face were exposed. Away, don't worry. Everyone has suffered losses. The most important thing now is to stabilize the island. CAI-11 glanced at Ji Shiwei and motioned him to sit down and talk. None of the 4 had expected that the New World was so strong. The most important thing is that it is really rich. The new brother who just joined wanted to rush to the front. If he was injured, he would get 10,000 yuan, if he was disabled, he would get 50,000 yuan, and if he died, he would get 100,000 yuan directly. Wealth and honor are sought in danger. They are all bad boys who lick blood on the edge of the knife. No one is worse than anyone else. On one side, there is the desperate betrayal of friends, and on the other side, there is the pretense of showing off. The result is self-evident. Lian Group is losing ground step by step. Ji Shiwei's land has been lost, and most of the land of Shenji's Mo Dingping has been reduced. Ma Jiaguo and CAI-11 also suffered heavy losses. Fortunately, there is Jinghai. New World has no fixed land on the outlying islands, and it will not be able to break in for a while. Why don't you go find Mr. He, Mo Dingping suggested. CAI-11 rolled his remaining right eye. This guy is really brainless. He won't care if he finds Mr. He at this time. If he really intervenes in the struggle between the societies, it will inevitably leave people with something to say and affect his image. CAI-11 thought for a while, send people to guard the Ziwan Bridge, the Governor Bridge, and the Friendship Bridge, and let some younger brothers squat at the Hejiang Wharf, Bayan Wharf, and Juao Wharf. This is the only way for now. CAI-11 is worthy of being a brain to get to the top. These places he mentioned are exactly the entry points that New World needs. This directly blocked both the land and water routes, and the New World could not get through no matter how brave it was. Others had no other choice but to try according to CAI-11's method. Sure enough, after the younger brothers of the New World suffered setbacks in these places several times, Li Qing did not let the younger brothers continue to attack. Instead, they slowly digested the newly conquered territory and conquered the remaining Fengshun Parish and Huawang Parish. Since then, the New World has taken over the entire Hejiang Peninsula except for the outlying islands. The He family mansion. Study. Mr. He looked at the latest Hong Kong daily, but his thoughts were not on the newspaper. Although he did not deliberately understand the actions of the New World, he still knew something. As the power of the New World in Hejiang grew, he felt more and more uneasy, especially the local community was so incompetent, which he did not expect. It seems that some extraordinary means must be used. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 77. Well done this time. Li Qing raised his wine glass and said to the younger brothers. It took 2 weeks to capture the peninsula cleanly, which is indeed worthy of praise. Thank you, Brother Qing. Ao picked up the wine glass and saluted Li Qing from a distance. The other boys also stood up and drank all the wine in their glasses. Brother, I'm sorry, I couldn't capture the outlying island. Dehu filled a glass of wine and came to Li Qing. Li Qing's eyes moved slightly as he looked at Dehu with his head wrapped in gauze and his arms hanging. Tiger, it's not a crime of war, but there are still experts on the other side. Dehu took a sip of the wine in his glass and was stunned when he heard this. Brother, what? What crime? What do you mean? Li Qing looked at the cultural man in front of him with a black line. Get out. Hey, okay. The action of turning around and leaving was so skillful that it made people feel heartbroken. The New World is having a celebration banquet, while Street City way across the sea is drinking to soothe its sorrows. Now he has no more land, and he only has 2 or 3 kittens around him. He even lost his right to speak in the so-called Four Alliance group. Although the other 3 didn't say anything, he knew that he had been kicked out. Viagra, what do you mean by this? We were emotionally involved with our friends, and Tuo De was defeated. Now we are left in this inhospitable place. His subordinate Lu Mao took a sip of wine and complained to Ji Shiwei depressedly. He heard that Hong Mao, who used to be his subordinate, is now a small boss in the New World, and is said to be getting a high salary. Mada, this is the first time I heard that there is a club that pays salaries to young and dangerous boys. Why couldn't he get such a good thing? His eyes looking at Ji Shiwei became more and more resentful. Stop humming talking, can I not know? No matter what I do, I was fooled by canned food. Market Wei said regretfully. Why don't we go to the New World? Anyway, we'll be frustrated here. Before Lu Mao could finish speaking, Ji Shiwei kicked the stool off. I'm the talker of the Hejiang Great Circle, and you asked me to be Li Qing's dog. I'll beat you to death. Ji Shiwei punched and kicked Lu Mao, who was already lying on the ground. Feeling that he was still not relieved, he picked up a chair and threw it at Lu Mao on the ground. Lu Mao screamed, his head was opened, and blood flowed out in a steady stream. Ji Shiwei stopped the beating after being persuaded by other boys. Mad, I'll give you this little money to see your injuries, get out. Don't let me see you. Ji Shiwei threw 3,000 Hong Kong dollars on the ground and spat at Lu Mao. Lu Mao covered his head, lowered his head to pick up the money on the ground, and limped out of the door. No one saw that there was crazy hatred in his eyes. Li Qing and his gang were drinking heavily when they saw a red-haired young and dangerous boy shouting, "Brother, brother, I have good news." "Hung Mao, what the hell are you talking about? Come and drink." Dahu looked at it and found out that it was his younger brother who he had just taken in. This red-haired man rushed to the front every time he attacked his friend, which was appreciated by Dahu. This time Dahu mentioned it in front of Li Qing and simply gave him a small boss, treating it as 1,000 gold to buy horse bones. "No, brother, there's something great going on. I have a brother, Lu Mao," and he said. Hung Mao told Dahu what happened. Dahu woke up immediately and ran to Li Qing in a few steps. "Dahu, is something wrong?" "Brother, what a heaven-sent chicken. Hey, can you use idioms? Where is it? Pull it out and let me take a look." Li Qing's words choked Dahu to death. Someone on the other side has surrendered. Li Qing was stunned when he heard this. What the hell, it's not the Gulf province. How could he surrender? "Brother, I don't understand, so I'd better let him explain it to you." Dahu pulled Hung Mao to Li Qing. When Hung Mao saw the big boss, he felt excited. "Big boss, this is what happened." After listening to Hung Mao's narration, Li Qing said, "Okay," he clapped his hands, "this is truly a God-sent opportunity." At this time, the whole room fell silent, and everyone looked at Li Qing. "Contact Jian Dan and ask him to send a boat over. We will go from Bayan Pier, where our internal response is." All the boys woke up instantly and rushed out with the guys in their hands, fearing that they would be robbed of their credit if it was too late. Late at night, Bayan Pier. A man with his head wrapped up like a mummy was walking back and forth on the pier with the cold wind blowing. From time to time, I would look at the beach, as if waiting for someone. Until a beam of light suddenly lit up on the sea, giving a signal of 3 long and 2 short. He quickly took the flashlight and responded with 2 short words and 1 long word. The boat slowly docked. "Green hair?" asked the dazzling red-haired man on the boat. The mummy nodded excitedly, "It's me." Bro, why are you like this?" As soon as he finished speaking, he was shocked by the big tiger behind him. "Hurry up and get ashore. Are you here to reminisce about old times?" The mummy's green hair looked blankly, and the people on the boat got off the boat with guys of different lengths. One boy accidentally dropped his AK on the ground. "What are you looking at?" "I've never seen it before." His words smelled of alcohol. Lu Mao quickly turned around and lowered his head without even daring to look. "Mud, these people even carry axe, they are so humming cruel." Red hair immediately hugged green hair. "Hurry, lead the way, time waits for no one." After hearing this, Lu Mao led the large troops towards the warehouse with familiarity. After walking about 1,000 meters, Lu Mao pointed, "This is it." Li Qing waved his hand when he heard this, and a group of people rushed in like crazy. Only then did Lu Mao notice that the man waving his hands was standing outside the warehouse, comfortably smoking a cigarette. "What's your name, boss?" Lu Mao quickly took out a lighter and lit it for Li Qing. Li Qing didn't say anything, just smiled and patted Lu Mao's shoulder. At this time, the sound of gunshots came from the warehouse, but it only lasted for a few minutes and then stopped. "Let's go in and take a look." Li Qing put down the cigarette in his hand and wrapped himself in the windbreaker. There were several corpses lying in various places in the warehouse, but Ji Shiwei was the only one who had not yet breathed his last. He looked at Li Qing pleadingly. "Qing, brother Qing, let me go, my property is all yours." Li Qing looked at Ji Shiwei contemptuously and took out his pistol. "Hey, come here, kid. I should have done it myself, but since I killed Lin Kuyu last time, the physical enhancement effect after killing has disappeared, and I have probably reached a bottleneck." Lu Mao pointed to himself in disbelief. "Me? It's you, come here." Lu Mao walked over tremblingly. Li Qing put the pistol into Lu Mao's hand and gestured with his eyes. Lu Mao took the pistol and pointed it straight in Ji Shiwei's direction. "Lu Mao, no, you forgot that I gave you 3,000 yuan." Ji Shiwei was lying on the ground, constantly moving his body. Hearing this, Lu Mao's eyes gradually became extremely fierce. "Do you know why I dyed my hair green? Do you think you were having an affair with my horse and I didn't know about it? I hum your mother." Lu Mao pulled the trigger fiercely until the pistol made a click, click, click sound. Li Qing looked at Lu Mao and smiled, then handed him a full magazine. "You, follow them and kill them." Lu Mao looked at Li Qing gratefully, nodded heavily, and firmly followed Li Qing's younger brother towards the distance. This dark night is destined to be unstable for Hejiang. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 78. The killing continued. With the sudden attack of the New World, the Four United Group was occupied one by one without any reaction. The battle was not as cruel as imagined. The younger brothers of the Four United Group were not stupid. The opponents all came out with axe, and they were all steel pipes and machetes. There was no point in fighting. But the backbone members of the Four United Group were not so lucky. Even if they surrendered, they were dragged out and killed one by Ao and others. It was almost 5 o'clock in the morning, and Mr. He, who was sleeping, was awakened by the ringing of the phone. He sat up, frowned, and answered the phone. He knew that if there was nothing important, he would not be called at this time. Mr. He, save me." Ma Jiaguo's hurried voice came from the phone, and continuous gunshots could be heard faintly. "What's the matter?" Mr. He asked calmly. To be the gambling king of Hejiang, he had seen all kinds of storms and waves, and this was not surprising to him. "It's Li Qing is calling." "Save me, Mr. He." Ma Jiaguo's voice was trembling, and the sound of gunfire was getting closer and closer. Mr. He's pupils condensed slightly. "Where are you?" "I'll send someone." Before he finished speaking, the voice on the other end of the phone had changed. "Sorry, he's dead now." Li Qing's cold voice came from the microphone. He knew it was Mr. He on the other side, and he threw the phone in his hand after saying that. "Li Qing, let me go, I promise to follow your lead in the future. Please." The sound of gunfire sounded, and Ma Jiaguo's voice paused. Mr. He listened to the sound of footsteps getting farther and farther away from the microphone, and his face turned livid. Li Qing walked out of the main room first, looking at Ma Jiaguo's younger brothers squatting in a row. "Give them machetes, as long as they can take down the canned food today, they will be accepted into the company." When Ma Jiaguo's younger brothers heard that there was still a way to survive, their desire to survive became stronger and stronger. They jumped up one by one and hurried to get their weapons, fearing that they would be robbed of them in the end. But the situation was not as optimistic as Li Qing imagined. The combat effectiveness of cans was obviously higher than that of other societies. As it was already light, the younger brothers of New World did not dare to use guns blatantly. As a result, they encountered fierce resistance in a section of Lotus Street, and Li Qing could only temporarily stop the attack and consolidate the territory that had been conquered. Fortunately, the entire peninsula and the Giamo Parish and reclamation area of the outlying islands have been taken, and the cans have been tightly bound to the St. Francis Parish. At this time, CAI-11 was sitting in the reception room of the He family, and he no longer had the arrogance before. Instead, he was full of sorrow. Who would have thought that New World had taken most of the outlying islands in just one night? He already knew that Ji Shiwei and Ma Jiaguo were dead, and he was also scared. If his territory was in the north, he would probably be in danger now. Mr. He pushed the door open and walked in. He glanced at the decadent CAI-11 and shook his head. If there was really no one, he would never use such a person even if he was beaten to death. Mr. He. CAI-11 saw Mr. He and stood up quickly. Mr. He waved his hand, "Sit down and talk." Mr. He, if you don't take action, I'm afraid that the whole Hejiang world will be controlled by New World. CAI-11 said straight to the point. Mr. He glanced at him, "Don't worry, this is Hejiang, and Li Qing can't turn the world upside down. I already know what happened last night, you go back first, I have my own arrangements." Mr. He thought for a while and said that since this matter has become like this, he had to come forward. CAI-11 wanted to say something after hearing this, but seeing Mr. He's unquestionable eyes, he nodded and walked out. Mr. He in the room took a puff of cigar, and the solemn expression in the smoke flickered. Suddenly he extinguished the cigar fiercely in the ashtray. "Take out the mobile phone in your pocket and carefully press a few numbers." "Mr. Governor, good morning. Obviously this person is Wei Qilai, the 127th Governor of Hejiang. Stop, your ID card." Many police officers from Macau appeared on the street. They started to check the ID cards of those who did not look like local residents. If the ID card was from Hong Kong and they had come to Macau in the past few days, they would be arrested and thrown into the detention room. At one time, more than half of the younger brothers of New World were arrested. And the police also closed the shops, bars, restaurants, and other places in the newly conquered places on the grounds of rectifying business. "Brother, many of our younger brothers have been arrested. It may be difficult to transfer people from Hong Kong now," Zhang Dongzhou said, standing next to Li Qing. "Well, it seems that Mr. He has taken action. Stop for now and let me think about the next plan." Li Qing thought for a moment and gently tapped the table and said. He had long anticipated the current situation. Mr. He would not let New World really dominate. Even if all the places were conquered, he would try his best to stop New World's actions. The intervention of the White Way also made Li Qing realize the shortcomings. Mr. He made a clear move, and he had to counter it. Fortunately, he already knew that the governor of Hejiang was not the legendary honest official, but money alone was not enough. Li Qing touched his chin, thought for a moment, and called Zhang Qiandan. "Qiandan, I will give you $10 million, and you send someone to Portugal to collect materials about the Hejiang Development Fund." After putting down the phone, he said to Zhang Dongzhou beside him, "Dongzhou, have someone prepare a Swiss bank bearer check of $50 million. Then let Bezo come in." Zhang Dongzhou nodded. "Brother, you called me." Bezo walked in, Li Qing whispered in his ear for a long time, Bezo nodded, and walked out of the room quickly. At 7 o'clock in the evening, Li Qing took Zhang Dongzhou and slowly walked towards the governor's residence in Zhuzishi not far away. "Stop, what are you doing?" The soldiers standing guard in front of the governor's residence stopped them and looked at the two of them vigilantly. "Hello, we want to see Governor Wei Qilai." "The governor does not see guests." The soldier looked at the two with contempt. "Can you see the governor casually now?" "Can you?" Zhang Dongzhou quickly took out a pistol and pointed it at the soldier's forehead. The soldier had been at ease for a long time. Although he was alert just now, he didn't react at all, and the cold barrel of the gun was pressed against his forehead. "Yes." The soldier swallowed his saliva. In this way, Zhang Dongxiu hijacked the soldiers all the way and walked into the official residence. The guards in the official residence were not vegetarians either. They pulled out their guns and pointed them at the two men. "Put down your guns, hurry up." The entire courtyard of the official residence was filled with warning shouts. Governor Wei Qilai, who was reading, heard the noise and opened the window to look at the courtyard. Li Qing looked at the governor, who stuck his head out and waved his hand with a smile. "Hello, Your Excellency the Governor, please forgive me for coming to visit you in a presumptuous way. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all." Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 79. Governor Wei Qilai's face became extremely ugly. There had not been such an arrogant person in Hejiang in the past few years. "Invite them up. Your Excellency, your safety." Wei Qilai shook his head. He didn't believe that anyone in Hejiang really dared to kill him now. Before entering the room, he was searched by guards and unarmed. "What's in here? Open it." The guard pointed at Zhang Dongsu's black suitcase. "Are you sure you want to open it?" Li Qing looked at the guard playfully. The adjutant next to him must have noticed something. He scanned the instrument several times and waved his hand to let them in. After walking into the room with Zhang Dongxiu, Wei Qilai sat on the sofa and read the newspaper, not paying attention to their arrival. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Governor, to meet you in this way." Li Qing smiled and bowed slightly to apologize. Wei Qilai then took off his glasses and looked at the young man in front of him. "There are a lot of people who want to see me, but to do it this way, just by yourself, you have a lot of nerve." Wei Qilai nodded at him with his glasses. "My name is Li Qing, from Xiangjiang. I think the governor must have heard of my name." When Wei Qilai heard this, a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes, and then he nodded. Li Qing smiled and continued, "I believe the governor also knows my purpose. This is the gift I prepared for you." Taking the suitcase from Zhang Dongxiu, he gently placed it on the table and pushed it forward. Wei Qilai looked at the suitcase with interest. "Open it." Li Qing nodded towards Zhang Dongxiu, who stepped forward and opened the suitcase. A Swiss bank bearer check for us $50 million lay quietly in the suitcase. Wei Qilai picked up the check, looked at it, and then threw it casually on the table. Obviously, this was not enough to impress him. Li Qing obviously guessed it and sat down opposite Wei Qilai. "I heard that the governor has an Ouhuali Foundation. My Portuguese friend told me that the Portuguese government has allocated a Hejiang Development Fund." He stared at Wei Qilai calmly and only said half a sentence. Wei Qilai's pupils shrank when he heard this, and his calm expression gradually turned gloomy. Just as he was about to press the button under the table, a sniper had already targeted Li Qing and Zhang Dongxiu. At this time, Zhang Dongxiu gently lifted his suit jacket, revealing a ring of C4 explosives tied inside. Li Qing also moved his buttocks in time, revealing a vest covered with C4. Wei Qilai was shocked, pursed his lips tightly, and didn't say a word. "Your Excellency, Governor, don't think about killing us. If we can't walk out of this door tonight, the materials about the Hejiang Development Fund will be placed on the table of the Portuguese Prime Minister." Li Qing stood up and said confidently. "Besides, do you think it's just the two of us?" Then he walked to the window and opened it. I don't know when the entire gate of the governor's mansion was filled with people. There was something bulging on his body. My request is simple, neutrality. Just be neutral. Wei Qilai didn't say anything, he just stepped forward, picked up the check, and put it into his pocket. Li Qing smiled and let Zhang Dongxiu out of the room without looking back. He knew that the matter was done, but he was a little regretful that the recorder he brought did not record any effective information. Early the next morning, all the younger brothers in the New World were released without paying any bail. Our boss is so cool, we don't even have to pay bail, we're out. As soon as they left the police station, the little boss was blowing water with Hejiang's younger brother. That's right, did you just see that the police chief sent us out with a smile? It has never been so beautiful. It's so cool to follow Brother Ching and be so cool wherever you go. The eyes of the Hejiang boys who had just been taken in were all bright. In the past, when they were arrested, they had to be beaten severely and paid bail before they could be released. I didn't expect the New World to be so powerful. It seems that both black and white really take it all. It's not even the slightest bit better than the previous club. Li Qing also didn't expect that by unintentional intervention, all the younger brothers in Hejiang would find a sense of belonging. He also used this time to integrate the younger brothers in Hejiang and distribute them reasonably in various places to prevent them from being removed. After a week of integration, New World has completely become a local community in Hejiang, and most of them are Hejiang people. Now even Mr. He has no reason to exclude New World from the quota. At this time, Mr. He had never encountered such a problem. He couldn't understand how Li Qing could easily defeat Governor Wei Qilai. It seems that this Li Qing is not simple either. Mr. He lamented that this was the first time that he suffered in the hands of this young man. What should I do? Mr. He, we can't let Li Qing continue like this, Kexi asked anxiously. He is really scared now. If the New World comes at all costs, he will definitely not be able to resist it. When Mr. He heard this, a trace of contempt flashed in his eyes. You don't think that's all I have, do you? Haha, since you can't resist it, let's muddy the water completely. As for the result, haha, it depends on God's will. Mr. He smiled. It was still unclear who would win. Li Qing is chatting with Chen Shooting and asking about her college life. Zhang Dongzhou hurriedly walked in with a solemn expression. Brother, it's not good. Li Qing said nothing and patted Chen Shooting's buttocks. Chen Shooting also walked out of the room knowingly. What's going on? Just received the news that Mr. He has decided to open some casinos and stacking code business. Li Qing frowned when he heard it. Didn't I know it a long time ago? His conditions are open to all clubs in Hong Kong, Hejiang, and Taiwan. Swish, Li Qing stood up. What a trick to cut off the firewood. He pinched his eyebrows. Mr. He's trick really made Li Qing's plan fall through. And there are hundreds of clubs in Hong Kong, Hejiang, and Taiwan, and the number of those who can compete with New World has reached the number of hands. Dry and cold, old thing. Li Qing was really a little annoyed by this old guy. But when he thought that if he really took over this business, he could make at least 5 billion Hong Kong dollars a year. By the way, Mr. He also held a banquet on the 15th of this month and invited interested clubs to participate. Zhang Dongzhou continued. Tisk tisk. Li Qing shook his head, and he had to admire the ability of this gambling king, who was worthy of being a master who could cover the sky with one hand in Hejiang. Just changing the rules of the game can make Li Qing scratch his head. The 15th. Okay, I want to see which clubs in Hong Kong and Taiwan are coming. Li Qing's mood quickly calmed down, and he carefully thought about countermeasures. Fortunately, his New World has already established a foothold in Hejiang, and is considered a half-local snake. Some things are easier to handle than other clubs. In a blink of an eye, it was the 15th, and Li Qing also brought Zhang Dongzhou to the banquet venue early. Li Qing. He Min hadn't seen Li Qing for a long time. This time, she knew that he was coming and waited outside early. Hello, Miss He. Li Qing said politely. Her father is her father, and she is her. Li Qing can still tell the difference. My father. During this period of time, through indirect inquiries, she also understood what happened that day. She always felt guilty about Li Qing, and of course, she also had some secret feelings. It's okay, Li Qing interrupted her. I heard that Wang's Haiheng died. Li Qing had just heard from his younger brother that Wang's Haiheng was drowned in the toilet and 108 toothbrush handles were stuck in his body. It's obvious who did it. He Min nodded and was about to say something. Boss Li, you are in such a good mood. Li Qing looked at the person coming from a distance, followed by a group of people in black. Thunder God. Hong Kong movies, I can see the loyalty value, I am not panicked at all. Author, Ban Wanqing Buletin Liang. Chapter 80. Li Qing narrowed his eyes slightly, a hint of coldness flashed in his eyes. Boss Lei, it's better to be famous than to meet him. The smile on Lei Gong's face froze, but he quickly concealed it. He Min, who was next to him, laughed out loud, regardless of what others thought. At this time Lei Fuhong behind Lei Gong finally couldn't bear it anymore. Li Qing, don't go too far. He pointed his index finger at Li Qing and yelled. Li Qing looked at Lei Fuhong's index finger with a gloomy face, and said grimly, believe it or not, I will remove your index finger too. When Lei Fuxing heard this, his pupils shrank and his index finger subconsciously retracted. Boss Li, don't do some things too harshly, otherwise the consequences will not be good. Lei Gong saw his son shriveled up and couldn't maintain the calm expression on his face. Then we'll see. Li Qing paid no attention to Thunder Lord's threats. Instead, he paid attention to the woman in kimono behind him. It was obvious that this woman was the legendary juicer girl Ding Yao. Ding Yao's eyes flashed with brilliance and he glanced at Li Qing intently. Humph! This sound was made by He Min, who saw Ding Yao looking at Li Qing with his vixen-like eyes. She felt extremely uncomfortable. As soon as He Min spoke, he caught Lei Gong's attention. This must be Mr. He's daughter. She is really knowledgeable, sensible, and generous. He Min heard this, nodded with a smile, and bowed slightly to express his gratitude. When Lei Gong saw that He Min was easy to talk to, he pulled Lei Fuxing behind him and said, this is the dog Lei Fuxing. Before he finished speaking, He Min turned to look at Li Qing, her arm deliberately holding his arm. It is indeed Kwanzaa. Li Qing, let's go in. Although He Min has been exposed to traditional Chinese education since childhood, he has been influenced by it since he was a child and has a dark belly. This small move can be regarded as revenge for Li Qing. Li Qing glanced at He Mi and this eldest lady actually had such an arrogant side. Shaking his head, he followed He Min's wishes and walked into the banquet hall. At this time, Lei Gong's face was as dark as those at the bottom of the pot. Really angry, he slapped Lei Fuxing on the face, you can't do anything, what's the use of you? After saying that, Lei Gong led the people into the banquet hall. Lei Fuxing was left with a look of disbelief on his face, looking at his father's back. Are you going to show your frustration on my face? There were already many people in the banquet hall. Li Qing took a look and saw that there were many people he knew and didn't recognize. Others saw surprise on their faces when they saw He Min and Li Qing being so close. Along the way with He Min, many people came up to say hello, and Li Qing could only return the greeting with a perfunctory smile. At this time, a waiter walked away and whispered something in He Min's ear. Li Qing, my dad has something to do with me. I will come over to chat with you later. He nodded and said softly yeah. He looked steadily at the 5-seater sofa in the banquet hall. Well, the sofa was very conspicuous. He casually picked up a glass of champagne, sat down on the sofa in seat C, and observed the bosses of various societies. It seemed that Mr. He was determined to muddy the water. Li Qing chuckled and said, it doesn't matter if you muddy the water, let me see who the shark is. Hey, isn't this Boss Li? Long time no see, he's almost becoming someone else's son-in-law. Sister D walked over wearing red high heels and said sourly. Li Qing looked at MRSD and patted the empty seat next to her, come here. Sister D rolled her eyes and sat down directly against Li Qing. I asked you, you little heartless person, why are you staying in Hejiang and not leaving? It turns out that you have a new person and have forgotten the old one. Sister-in-law Di looked like a deeply resentful woman. Li Qing smiled nonchalantly and patted her butt. Damn it, if it weren't for the loyalty value 80% entry on your head, I would have believed it. What? You want to make some money too? Li Qing didn't have time to flirt with her and asked directly. Sister-in-law Di hesitated when she heard this, then gently patted away Li Qing's mischievous hand. I'm afraid you'll suffer a loss. He glanced directly at the bosses from all over the place. One word expresses Li Qing's attitude vividly. I believe you. Hey Nima, pay the public food tonight. Sister Di became angry and twisted Li Qing's ears, stood up and left. Looking at Sister Di's back, Li Qing lit a cigarette boredly and started puffing away. Sanlian Gang, Alphabet Gang, Dongxing, Hongxing, Wanwanjiaodu, Helianchen, Xinji, Nijia. All associations with some strength are here. It seems that this piece of fat thrown by Mr. He has attracted associations from both sides of the Taiwan Strait and 3 places. Stand up, my boss wants to sit here. A sudden voice sounded from behind, startling Li Qing, who was thinking. Get up, or your legs will be broken. The voice was a little nervous. Li Qing looked back and saw a man with white hair and a nervous smile on his face. Do you know why, when I sit on this sofa, no one else dares to come? Bai Mao looked around and saw that all the seats were occupied. Some of the bosses were even huddled together, and some had already scolded them because of the seats. But he, who is already neurotic, doesn't care about this. He only knows that this is the C position, and Li Qing occupies such a big sofa alone. A country bumpkin from the Bay province. Zhang Dongzhi grabbed Bai Mao's neck from behind, and then slowly lifted him up. Li Qing looked at the scene jokingly, and said to the man in a suit not far away, Hey, your little brother is dying. Haha, this is the boss Li of the New World, right? I'm Lu Jian. Lu Jian greeted with a smile. Li Qing buried himself in the sofa, looked at the Wanwan gangster who called himself Lu Jian, and said nothing. But the people around him began to talk. The country folks in Wanwan province are really brave, even daring to mess with Li Qing. Who said it wasn't? I guess he just came from the countryside and doesn't know Li Qing's name yet. Tisk tisk, a small gangster who has never seen the world actually wants to compete with Boss Li for a position. He deserves his bad luck. The words of the people around him were not concealed, and they were all heard by Lu Jian. Just as Zhang Dongzhi made a move, Mr. He came down from upstairs. Li Qing waved his hand, and Zhang Dongzhi immediately threw Bai Mao to the ground. Hello, Mr. He. Mr. He. A wave of greetings rang out. Mr. He upstairs smiled and nodded, looking at the big guys. I saw that of the 5 sofas he had specially placed in the banquet hall, 4 were full of people, and the most conspicuous one was Li Qing, who was the only one sitting on the sofa. Others, whether from the Sanlian Gang, Helianchen, or ZZ Gang, were all squeezed on one sofa. Even most people were standing. Please leave first if you don't have a seat. Mr. He said slowly. The big guys of the societies standing downstairs were in a commotion, and some even began to question loudly. His purpose was obvious. First, to eliminate those who were not strong enough, and second, to put eye drops on Li Qing. Lu Jian gritted his teeth and walked towards the sofa where Li Qing was in the surprised eyes of everyone. Mr. He looked at the scene and smiled happily. This was exactly the effect he wanted.